Right, thank you for joining this session. We're going to be speaking with Irfan Naseem of Salt Texture. We're going to be talking about salt bricks and what you can actually build with pink Himalayan salt. So welcome, Irfan.
Thank you very much for having me back, Erin. It's a pleasure to join the WHA for 22.
Thank you. Yes, we did have a really good discussion last year about the history of salt. So if you missed that, that is available on our YouTube channel. So you can go back there and check that out. Loads of interesting information there from Irfan. But this time, it's all about building with it. How can we use salt in our projects? So let's start off with just a little recap, perhaps, on where does it come from before we start going into what we can do with it.
Okay. So obviously the pink salt is from just one region in Pakistan. It's the only place in the world where actual pure crystal pink salt comes from. It's known as the salt range, which sits between Punjab of India and Pakistan and the northern areas right up to K2 and the high peaks of Tibet, India, Pakistan. So there's a range there around 1,400 kilometers long, around 800 kilometers deep, and it's literally all salt.
Wow.
Um, the deposits have been there for thousands of years, and it's a prized possession of Pakistan. So we're very, very proud of our heritage and the such a prized mineral that we have there.
Brilliant. Now, I know you have been to Pakistan recently. It was post the floods. So I just thought I'd ask how things are looking in Pakistan, because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of devastation there as a result of
Yeah,
those floods.
yeah. So obviously, I had a trip recently, just probably around 4 weeks back. I was there for around 6 weeks. The flooding has impacted massive areas of Pakistan. It's been the worst in the history of Pakistan as a country. Um, Luckily, unfortunately, where our mining locations were, the actual mines and the areas around it haven't been massively or detrimentally affected. But what has been affected more so is the infrastructure. So roads, railways have been washed away. Rivers swell to 3, 4 times their usual size. And it's now rebuilding the infrastructure, which is going to take years.
Mm.
Um, they've talked about having 2 meters of rainfall in 4 weeks.
Wow, there's a lot of water.
Yes.
All
So
right.
yeah,
So has
the
that
devastation on
affected,
the ground's been heavy.
yeah, has that affected the supply chain at all?
It's affected the supply chain somewhat in terms of moving logistically, but in terms of access to the mines and mining the material, that's not been impacted as such. The only time that really does get affected is around this time of the year where we have monsoon seasons and when it makes it difficult to get into the mines. Obviously, we're still using traditional methods of mining, which is what they call a room and pillar, which was set up by the British going back to 1800s, and we still use that today because all our mining is underground mining, so it's not open cast mining, which is obviously to protect the salt from being completely washed away, and also to protect the environment.
Brilliant, brilliant. Right, I think you've got a few slides that we can work our way through. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I think one I wanted to kind of like probably portray the message across to people that are interested in salt walls is salt as a material is very sustainable. Our reserves are very sustainable in terms of there's been research done that even if we were mining very extensively, there's over 600 billion tons worth of salt reserves in the salt range, and we are taking out less than, I think it's like 0.01% per year.
Wow.
So the volume of material there is immense. And the other thing, Mother Nature, every time it rains, we've got such large swathes of pure salt. It basically, once it dries, it recrystallizes. So the tendency for it to basically disappear is not really there. It just basically will recrystallize and reform. And obviously, it does help with it being hidden from the uh, the conditions of your environment. So yeah, it's very sustainable. It's so solid when it comes out of the ground. It's very You can carve it, you can cut it, you can make various shapes from it. Typically, most of the suppliers tend to only make a salt brick. It's very difficult for um, the masons there to really think outside of the box, because of engineering infrastructure and basically having the machinery and access to machinery to be able to create amazing things. So we're very fortunate with ourselves. We're obviously British owned, but we own our own mines and our own factories in Pakistan, and we're very heavily invested in to ensure that we are uh, basically moving forward with development, innovation, which people haven't seen in this industry before. Some of you may not be aware, but our family have been in this for 60 years. I'm third generation. I took over a few years ago. So I'd just like to obviously share some of the information, share some of the your very unique qualities of salt texture, which not blowing our own trumpet, but just let people know that we can do things that are very out of the norm that you will typically see in the market. So obviously just a bit of information. So I think one of the key things about quality and size, anything can start from an 8-inch brick right up to, we can do 30-inch panels, which are very, very large panels. We can craft into arches, we can craft into bricks, we can craft into blocks. And so this is some of the uses of kind of where currently our company is seeing people putting in salt walls. So anything from commercial environments, saunas, residential, lighting, handcrafted, artisan meats. The versatility of the salt is unbelievable, and it goes into so many different aspects of building infrastructure, building envelopes, and the environment. So, holistically, medicinally, and also aesthetically, it's been used in so many places now. So that's some of kind of the overview of the information and quality and size. So one of the things unique to our company and the way we work is we've developed quite a few styles and patterns which wasn't readily available on the market. It's only been in the last few years we really engineered and put together some really key ideas and designs. Every client's needs are quite individual, which means you can't really give them a cookie cutter approach and say, this is all we've got. You know, we really think outside of the box, which has shown that, you know, through the work we've done for the likes of high net worth individuals, the Kimpton Group, IHG, private spas and so on as this year, it's been an unbelievable experience. So this is some of the typical kind of stretcher bonds, stack bonds, third quarter running bonds, quarter bonds, herringbone designs, diagonal bonds. So these are all some of the things we can do. And then we go into kind of custom bespoke random walling as well, which we can do. All of it really depends on the client's needs and requirements. So that's really the quality and size of the material that we can work with.
Fantastic. Now, when you actually build your walls, how do you go about doing that? Is it just stuck on a wall? Is it stuck onto a backer? How do you do that?
Yeah. So this is one of the real important things that I think, you know, installers, spa owners, directors of hotels, leisure facilities, right down to the private individual. This material is a very, very strong, but also a very heavy product. And glue is a big no-no for our company. We basically developed and devised a system and a new patent pending system where everything is mechanically fixed. And the reason we do that is really twofold. Number one, longevity of your salt wall. It will stay there for absolutely years. As long as it's been on the ground, it can stay in the environment that you put it in. And number two is to meet with the compliance of safety regulations, insurance and liability. If you're aware that obviously the material is a very dense material, it's very non-porous, which means when you adhere glues between joints, you're really not penetrating more than the subsurface of the material, and the material has a tendency to want to sweat. Now, when the material sweats, those joints basically become open. So there's really no way of you being able to say that that wall will stay there without having that mechanical structure in place. So I'll just show you just quickly on that. You know, a system that we implement is basically a timber frame stud walling in the rear, but then we encompass a full rail system with the lighting, including the membranes, including your floor membranes, including your complete rail infrastructure, right down to the designs of the walls. Because a lot of we'd say a lot of suppliers out there, because they don't have the relationship with the factories and they are just buying in material, they can't really provide more than just the product. We're full turnkey. We go right back to the sourcing of our raw material, fabrication in our own factories, and have a full internal design team. So just to give you an awareness of some of the work we do, this is some of the modeling we do for the walls, interiors. We provide a full CAD drawings for every single installation. It can be right from the framework to setting up arches, how it's all fixed. And all this is part of the package that we offer to the clients, you know, right down to the lighting as well, which I think is really, really important, that you're not just buying the bricks and being told stick it on the wall. You really need to look at building as you do when you build a building. You put timber frames in, you put brick walls in. That's all in compliance to some form of regulation, and we advise clients to do the same as well.
Right. So you were mentioning about how the salt's heavy. How much does it actually weigh?
So 1 ton or 1 cubic meter weighs approximately 2.2 tons.
Okay,
So
so yeah,
nearly
that's heavy.
four and a
So
half, yeah, nearly 4,500 pounds.
okay, and when you're building quite a tall wall, that all that loading is really going down through one strip of bricks, whether it be 25 mil thick, 50 mil thick, or 100 mil thick. That's kind of loading there. So you need to be really careful about your foundation, which is underneath where you're putting the brick wall, as well as all the supports. And I know from building experience that with putting stone on walls, they all need to be mechanically fixed back as well. And you need to be careful if anyone can, if the wall is located where people can kind of either lean against it or touch it. If you start moving against a wall or pushing against it, if it's only bonded there, then there's obviously the chance that it could come loose or fall off and hurt someone.
I mean, typically our philosophy is that we want the wall to live forever, and for the wall to live forever, as it's lived underground forever, it needs to be supported, because once you take away the natural support that they had underground, you need to support it in some form mechanically. So for us, mechanical fixing is key. Number two is to also really support the client's needs and demands, not just from a price perspective, but also in terms of an aesthetic perspective. And I break that down into really two key things. Number one is when you're building typically with a 25 mil tile, we would say that needs to be fixed back on every single level. As your seating or the thickness of the material you're using gets thicker, you can then reduce the need to be fixing back on every level. Maybe you fix back on every other level or every other third level, but it all depends on the size and the thickness of the material you're really using. Number two, every material that we have, and we are the only company globally that's been able to separate pink salt into variations, and that variation is basically by color, and each color has a material and has a different type of density and characteristic. So this really dark red, which we call perfect red, has a much different structural stability and integrity than compared to this cloudy waters, or compared to the amber peach, down to the crystal pink, and then the white. The white is much softer, much more crystalline, which means when it comes to a structural point, we have a completely different methodology of what we recommend to the client, right down to the grey smoke. So aesthetics play a key part in it, but also the size of the material you're using will play a key part in the way you're going to build or wrap the envelope of the building you're working in as well. This is something new that was never really introduced onto the market 2-3 years ago, and with WHA are using a very, very unique proprietary system that we developed in Pakistan that when we select our raw material from underground, we know exactly from the client's needs that if they want to match things to the aesthetic of an interior, be it the white or the salmon or the crystal pink, we can actually develop material for that use, which is quite remarkable. Thinking that these huge slabs come out of the ground, how can you dictate the color? Which is really unique to us. So I think they all play a really key part in giving the clients the best of what they need for the solution and for their requirements.
So is one color more common than the other? Like when you're mining it out, do you come across one color more than
Typically,
others?
yeah, very good question, Erin. Typically, we have our family have access to around 6 or 7 of our own mines, and within that, it's remarkable just how nature's given us pockets of white and pockets of red, and we can basically work then to only remove what we're actually working with. So we don't excessively remove material if we don't have the requirements for it. Obviously, number one, when you expose the material to the environment, humidity, over a period of it being exposed outside, you can literally lose 10 tons of material within 6 months through just dissolving, because of how high the humidity is in Pakistan. So yeah, different mines, different colors, different structural and different characteristics of the material as well.
Yeah, last year we did talk a little bit about the composition of the salt and how it has over 80 different minerals in it. So obviously people can go back and catch up on that. But generally, the more red it is, the more iron it's got in it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the darker, the deeper the red it goes, you go into what we call the highest spectrum of mineral content, but also the highest level then of impurity. So the very light crystal pink, which is, obviously the purest of the material is the pure white. But as you go darker through the spectrum, it becomes more mineralized, to a point of where you'll start getting iron oxides, you'll start getting grit, you'll start getting stone, and then you'll see that through the translucency of the material when you're installing as well. So again, the aesthetics of the material really impact of what you're trying to create inside the building envelope.
And is there a price difference between the different colors? Is one more expensive than the other?
Yeah, so typically when we extract from the ground, we call this the mixed array. And if we're not doing a selection, this is kind of like fundamentally what clients will install as a mix. So you'll see the variation in the colors when it's being installed. But as you go through the white and the gray, they're more expensive. As you start selecting some of these more prominent colors, like here, for example, the crystal pink and the amber peach, the colors can get 2 to 3 times more expensive in terms of material costs.
Right. Is that also because there's less of it?
There's less of it, but it also goes through a process of selection, and the selection is very, very intensive in terms of labor, but also very intensive of, it's like when we take a piece of material out of the ground, the way we have to cut that material then to make sure we get that piece out becomes a very technically demanding job.
Right. So when people are building their salt walls, what considerations should they have to decide whether they want to do a 25 mil thick brick or a 50 mil or 100 mil thick brick? What's the benefits of each one?
I think I'd say 3 things are probably key there. Number one is floor loading. So what's the conditions of the current floors you're working to will dictate the size and the thickness of the brick. So typically 25 to 50 mil per square meter, you're an average on a 25 mil tile, you're looking at 2 kilos, so around 4 pounds of brick per square meter, around 200 pounds. So on that basis, if you've got a 10 square meter wall, you're looking at 2,000 pounds for a 10 square meter wall. I would consider that you're making sure that your foundations are very suitable for that, which means as your engineers would structurally would sign off your foundations, we would say we'll dictate that based on your foundation. Number two, are you working on ground level or are you working on upper levels as well? So do you need to reinforce floors, or do you need to go for a thinner tile, or go for a mixture of a wall with partitions to break it up into divisions to lighten the weight? And I say the third thing that probably is one of the most demanding aspects of it is do you have competent a team of competent builders or tilers or people that put facades or finished floors in or finished walls in, how technically competent they would be to install this. Now, the great thing about our system is we provide you everything from, right from the rails to the membrane, so all the instructions, right down to the specific wall of how you're going to build it out, which is one of the massive advantages that we have, and it's shown the success with working with some leading clients around the world. The other thing is a logistics issue. Obviously, because of the weight of the product, moving it about, ground floors is obviously much easier. If you're going to upper floors, again, logistics can dictate the size and the thickness of the walls you're going to put in. I think they kind of like the 2 or 3 main aspects I would say to clients that we really work with. And I think the other thing overall is it's much easier for us to make bricks and blocks and panels. But when we start doing arches and the likes of it, lead times can be extended. We've done some absolutely amazing walls, which I can show you shortly of what we've installed. So those 3 or 4 things really play a key part in the kind of decision-making process.
And are you seeing people using walls in other rooms, not just salt rooms?
Well, that's the crazy part this year. We've seen more people installing salt rooms into wellness areas outside of a spa or a sauna, or encapsulated walls we do in a steam room. We've had people now putting in what they call breakout rooms or zen rooms or peace rooms, where it's literally a chill out room. They just want to relax. The lighting plays a massive part in creating those wellness rooms. But I think also as well, because of the purification of what the wall can achieve in an environment, it's a living, breathing wall. Any humidity in a room or stale air or bacteria is attracted to the wall. The wall will basically kill all that bacteria and will basically recrystallize on the surface. I mean, the ability for this product to do this is just unbelievable. It's literally like having an antibacterial wipe on your wall. So it's got some really, really key features. I mean, this year alone, we've built furniture, we've built tables, we've done walls in people's bedrooms, we've done walls in people's living rooms, we've done walls in people's communal areas. What we've seen this year is unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, I have a salt wall, and every day I look at it and I smile. It does make me happy. It's just so beautiful, and it's natural, and it really is natural beauty. The other thing that I know we're kind of working on in getting more information about is the EMF blocking that pink Himalayan salt can do. I actually have an EMF reader and have been testing it in my office to see how it blocks the radiation. So do you have any comments on that side of things at all?
Yeah, obviously we've had discussions. I know about this airing back and forth. This year has just been immense for us in terms of a company, but also in development of what we're doing. With the selection of materials, building a lot of new infrastructure into the background about how things are done, and the EMF and just a general research that's been done across the globe, in the USA, in Europe, about how the 2 aspects of it, the way the walls affect your serotonin levels because of the way it mimics sunlight, has been researched quite heavily now. Everyone swears by a salt lamp. Everyone that has a salt lamp says, I feel so good. And it's all about the colors that are refracted and emitted from that salt lamp. Now, just imagine having a wall 10 times the size of that. It does something completely different to you. And secondly, you're completely right. The strength of blocking electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic frequencies through the salt is literally from being 100 bits of EMF and EMR literally down to like 5. It blocks immensely well, which is why we're actually in talks with people that are putting in these retreats where it's basically no technology allowed, but to block out all the other EMR and EMF, they're actually surrounding their rooms with these salt walls. So it's definitely work in progress. It's definitely something we're working on, and it's definitely something that we see as a company, as well as some of the other key aspects that we're looking at to introduce for 2023. It's definitely benchmarked to be launched and to be marketed much more now as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, I have this idea of like creating this little salt box and putting my mobile phone in a plastic bag and putting it in the box. Maybe you could have them in hotel rooms or something, you know, make sure people aren't getting the EMFs from various devices.
Well, it's definitely worth doing, and we are really now seeing people asking about EMF and EMR. And I mean, it really shows people that sleep with salt labs next to their bed. And I have two really large pieces of crystal next to my table. And, you know, people might say, you know what, they'll take this with a pinch of salt. But, you know, when I've got pieces of crystal like this, the tendency for the migraines and the headaches I used to get have really been nowhere near as bad as they used to be. You know, and I do say, you know what, people say, well, really, is it true? I always say to people, try it, and even visit a salt room or visit a salt wall, and feel how different you feel afterwards. I mean, it's unbelievable. I could spend hours and hours in the caves in Pakistan,
Yeah.
and the environment is conditioned to be 21 degrees all year round. It's not, we're not putting that environment in there. It's the Mother Nature's created that environment in there. 21 degrees, and it's 50 degrees outside.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. So
yeah, I've definitely noticed a difference since I have built myself a little mini wall between my printer and my where I sit here. I've got a printer behind there. When I got my little EMI MF reader out and I pointed it at my printer, it literally beeps and goes off the scale. And when I put the salt wall there, or when I turn the printer completely off, the levels are really, really, really low. And I'm pretty sure that I was getting some headaches from that. So, you know, more to come on this. Do watch this space. We'll be doing some more investigating.
definitely.
So why don't you show us some of those projects you've been talking about?
Yeah. So I mean, typically, obviously, we've done quite a few projects this year, and this is just kind of an idea, a concept that we do. So we work with our CAD designers, and we always try and visualize and mock up to the client potentially how their walls could look, and how we could put together an environment for them. This has been probably one of the hardest things to do, because salt walls are not inside these programs, and the material is so hard to picture. Like, you know, if I try and take a picture of a salt brick and then on my phone and then show it to you in person, it's completely different. So there's kind of two real focus things that we've started to do now. Number one, as Erin, you probably had your salt texture sample box. We now send out kits to clients with the selection of the 6 materials in there, with different colors of light, warm light and white light, to kind of mimic the effects of how it would look. Yeah, thank you very much for that. How it would look when you light your walls with different color wavelength of light. So Erin's got a beautiful box there with all her different materials. And even though in the box Erin there, it looks like it won't pass light through. When you pass light through them, each one will bring a different color variation and aesthetics. So the first thing for us, we always try and ascertain the client's needs, how they're going to fit the wall, what will the environment be, because we look at a lot of things when it comes to a wall. For example, which country is it going into? Is it going into a wet room? Do we encapsulate? Is it going into a room where the humidity is going to be low? Do you have HVAC systems? Do you have other types of air conditioning within the room? And we look at the envelope as well. That kind of dictates really kind of two aspects. Number one, the size of the wall, and number two, the thickness of the wall and the installation. So this is actually a project we're currently working on for a client, to kind of visualize and mock up a concept of how it would look. I think it would look unbelievable once this wall's done. So this is kind of the first aspect. The second aspect of once we've done that is really the key part is the drawings. One of the things that nearly every supplier doesn't offer is a solution of how the walls will be installed with kind of full set of instructions. Now, one of the really good things that we do is we actually work to American sizes as well as European sizes. So we offer the best of both worlds when it comes to drawings. And obviously we provide the drawings, and then typically these are kind of off site now to show you some of the jobs that we've done. So this was a job that we've recently done for the Kimpton Group and IHG in Spain. These walls were unbelievable. They were the best part of 4 tons each in weight. They were 6 inches thick, but the walls had literally no machine marks taken on them. These literally the rawness of the natural beauty of the salt is what you see here now. So when we took this out of the ground, we literally just carved the back and we left the front untouched. So you can see here a typical kind of installation on site. This project took around 9 months from start to completion, so you can see the complexities involved in that. There were 7 different brick sizes in here, different blocks. Again, you can have a smooth surface, you can have a tile, you can have a panel, you can have a block. This was a very, very elaborate, very luxurious salt wall.
Looks like a good game of Tetris or a jigsaw
So,
puzzle.
everything was kind of pre-planned on this one. It was done to very, very tight engineering, but also it was laid out. Obviously, you know, being an engineer, me being an engineer, we like to be very meticulous in our planning. So this was typically an installation now happening on site. So as you can see, everything provided here, from the aluminium foiling to some of the aluminium frames that are now starting to go on the wall to setting it up, was all. We actually flew our team out to this job to conduct this job. And obviously you can now see we've started to set the wall up. This is all fixed back. I don't know if you can just see to the, let me just go back. So there's some of the mechanical fixings you can just see popping out there on the top. So this was on a rail system, but also was tied back with a steel strap and a dowel. Dowel being a plastic polycarbonate piece that we drilled top and bottom into the salt to trap it. And then the polycarbonate, what it doesn't do then, it doesn't create that very small sight line of where you might see there's something behind it. It's like going for an x-ray and finding someone's left a spoon inside you. So we did that wall, and you can see the texture of this wall is very elaborate. It's amazing on this one. I mean, that's a kind of upfront one on the layout and the color of the wall. So you can see now, you know, kind of a finished kind of wall of what we delivered on this site. I mean, that for us is just, everybody that goes to see this wall is just blown away.
Wow factor.
So the wow factors there, the colors, and so this wall had a mixture of the material, but as you go thicker on the material, what it does in terms of the light it creates is just overwhelming. You can see from that as well. This is on a light intensity as well, so we can control the light intensity to change the mood of the room. It's obviously a very natural wall, so it didn't have any kind of smooth finishes on there. I mean, you can see the intensities have been increased there. So, you know, this is typically the process we go through from, you know, a plan, an idea, a concept, to the planning, to the manufacturing, right through to the installation on this drawings. If anybody likes to see any more of these pictures or what's involved in the install, we're obviously more than happy to share them as well. So yeah, typically that's where we work with, and how we will work as a company, helping, you know, everyone install amazing salt rooms. One thing that I would like to add, even though with the addition of halotherapy, you'll be aware as we're aware, speleotherapy, where it all originated from in the Eastern Europeans are practicing speleotherapy, which was sitting in the salt cave, was to basically create the environment of a salt cave. Now, a lot of people do say to us, what does the what does the material on the walls and the floors offer in terms of the overall experience? Well, the overall experience, one, is that you're conditioning the room to act like you're actually sitting in a salt cave. Number two is the properties of the walls and everything that if you're sat in a halotherapy room with a halo generator on and you're breathing in the salt, what that also does is you may be an individual in there, or there may be multiple individuals in there. And if you sat in that same environment, that wall will kill any bacteria within seconds. Number two is the environment that it creates is you're holistically creating that same environment that we would have practiced 200-300 years ago, but we can't travel to that salt cave anymore because of cost, logistics. They're very dangerous. So we're trying to bring you that full experience indoors. So if you want to create that whole environment, we've had people that haven't installed the salt walls and then they've gone, we should have really put in a salt wall or put in something to recreate that kind of environment. So
the good thing with salt walls though is sometimes you can retrofit them.
Yeah.
So just because you haven't put it in to start with doesn't mean you can't put it in. So it's definitely worth discussing the options if you are still looking for a salt wall.
Yeah, one of the other key things as well is obviously we do salt walls. They can be custom to spaces and size, but we also are launching our modular systems this year, which will be frames that could be put on the wall anywhere from 1,000 by 1,000, 3 foot by 3 foot, right up to 6, 8, 10 foot long landscape portrait frames, which are literally you can plug and play them, and they're not going to be cumbersome where you need 5 or 6 people to try and lift them up to put them on the wall. We've actually developed a really kind of cool system now where you can actually set the framework up and add your bricks on, turn the lighting on, and it's a kind of a one-person job, which typically is not happened in the industry at the moment or within the kind of the market. Again, so design aesthetics, the style, the orientation, the colors is all very, very unique to our company, which is why we've seen success around the world.
Brilliant. Well, we're actually running out of time, so I'm going to have to wrap up. Are there any final little bits you want to cover? I think we've talked about most things about.
Yeah, I think one of the only things that I would probably more than anything is I would say to clients, ask questions, and even if you think they sound silly, ask those questions, because one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now is there's a handful of suppliers around the world. There's not many. There's a handful in the US, there's a handful in Europe, but nobody has that attachment to the material as we do. My father was a Pakistani born. He came to the UK. We're of Pakistani origin. We have our own mining. We have our own factories. And for us, that link back, number one, means that we're running everything to meet European slave labor standards, the workers' rights, the workers' holidays, the sustainability. It's shocking to say that Pakistan still is trying to meet a lot of these requirements, but as being a British-owned company, having that factory in Pakistan, we're running things so everything meets accreditations and meets standards. The workers are very, very well looked after. They're paid way above what you would typically get out there. Child labor within these mines can happen. It doesn't happen massively. We've never really seen it, but once it comes out of the mines, because the mines are, even though we have mining licenses, they are given by the government of Pakistan, so they're not easily handed out. But once it gets into the factory level, the factory can employ whoever they want, and it's much cheaper for them to employ child labor than it would be to employ an adult and train them up. So I really, really say is check your supply chain. Check where your material is coming from. Check that the material they're offering you, will it meet the client's needs and demands? But more so is, do you truly, genuinely know for the cost they're delivering that material, which is alarming to us because we've seen this, is have a look at realistically when people are saying that it's going to only cost you this much, is what would the conditions be of the workers out in Pakistan? you know, and I think that's such a key part in all of this, that transparency and that level of openness. You know, we say to any of our clients, you want to come to Pakistan, we're more than happy to take you, because if we've got that level of openness, it means that we have nothing to hide.
I'd love to come to Pakistan, but I'm not going in July, August.
No, I would highly not recommend it, but we're coming to a great time of the year, January to April. So, you know, we're looking at putting a trip together. So by all means, Erin, you know, we're more than happy to take you. So I think as overall aspects wise, I would say ask the questions.
Mm.
You know,
That's very important. Thank you for flagging that up. Well, thank you very much for coming on again. It's, as always, been very, very informative. And as I had mentioned earlier, if you want to go back and find out a bit more about the history of salt, jump onto YouTube and you can catch up on last year, alongside a bit more background on halotherapy. But for now, thank you very much, Irfan. We look
thank you
forward to
so much,
hearing
Erin,
from
for
you,
having us.
and
Thank
we
you
look
very
forward
much.
to seeing you again soon.
Okay, speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.